Hi, folks. This is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates. I have Family Tree Counseling's 500th video, and it's entitled, What Are the Narcissistic Patterns Hidden in Your Family Tree? Excuse me. I was working with a client this week, and some of his family of origin patterns reminded me of myself and my family of origin. And it reminded me of a newsletter article. We used to send an actual piece of paper in the mail. Remember the mail? And we'd send a newsletter out 4 times a week. We had about 3,000 people on our list, and everybody would get a newsletter, and I would write a couple of articles 4 times a year. And an article from 2005 in the fall, it was entitled, Where in the World Did You Come From? And it was about ethnicity and patterns in your family system. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this article, and then I'm going to go ahead and read it and comment as I go. And I think you'll see some interesting things about patterns. What I'm wanting you to do is to study your family tree. Who was your father as you were growing up? What did he grow up with? What role did he play in his family of origin? Who was your mother as you were growing up? What is the truth about your family and your parents? So in high school, I had this best friend named Joey, and he was Italian, and his parents had both come from Italy, and I grew up in Kokomo, and it was the tailor, Luigi Balalla, just down the street from us. And I loved going to their house because their house felt safe, it felt warm, and there was just this sense of loyalty and connection in his family, and warmth and stability that I didn't have in my family. And I associated it with, well, they're Italians, and I didn't know what I was. I felt like sort of a mutt. Somebody would say, well, what are you? What is your ethnicity? And I wouldn't know what to say. There's a quote that I've always liked from Alex Haley's book, Roots. So who you are and how you behave in relationships has everything to do with your family background. Ethnic background is vital in gaining an understanding of who you are and what makes you tick in relationships. If you want to understand your marriage and your relationships, you must first understand yourself and your heritage, as well as those of your spouse. In his epic book, Roots, Alex Haley hit on this truth when he wrote, Kunta Kinte realized how lost he had become. Day by day, year by year, Kunta had become less resisting, more accepting, until finally, even without realizing it, he had forgotten who he was. In countless things he did, as well as said and thought, his Mandinka ways had slowly been replaced by those of the slaves that he had been amongst. Kunta then vowed to himself that now more than ever his dignity must become a shield between he and they. How ignorant of themselves they were. They did not even know who they were or where they had come from. They knew nothing of their ancestors, as Kunta had been taught from his boyhood. So there was this scene in the movie Roots where Kinte was in the marketplace where they were selling slaves, and he could tell what tribes the various people came from by how they looked. And the slaves that had been around in the United States had lost their roots. They didn't know what tribe they came from. They just knew that they came from Master Jones's farm, and that's all they knew. And Kunta wanted to instill in his children and children's children the story of being a Mandinka warrior. So I felt like a mutt, and then in the summer of 2005, I went and visited my brother who was living near Houston at the time. And we went and we saw a relative named David Smith, who was 83 years old at the time, and he was my father's mother's brother, my great uncle. My grandmother, Cora, died when I was young, and I didn't really have memories of her. The only thing I knew about her was she gave birth to my father when she was only 14 years old. And then she married an abusive alcoholic named Ray Brown, who would beat my father. And the other family lore that was handed down was rather than giving my father money that he would send back when he was in the service, she kept it. So when I went to see this David Smith, who was a genealogist and an expert on our family history, I was looking for information about who I was. And there was this picture of my great uncle when he was a young man. Actually, it was a picture of his father when his father was a young man. My great-great-grandfather looked just like me, looked just like my son, looked just like me at about, 25 years old. It was really spooky. So what I found out wasn't very nice, but it was authentic information, and it was what I was hungering for. David Smith said that my grandmother had been a sconniver, which is a combining of the words schemer and conniver, sconniver. I don't know where that word came from, but that's the word that this man used about my grandmother. And I took it to mean that she was conniving, a manipulator, a user. I didn't know what a narcissistic person was back then, but pretty much a sconniver is a narcissist. David said that his brother, whose name was Huey, had also sent his mother many thousands of dollars in savings bonds when he was in the war, and that his mother kept that money as well. So she conned her kids out of their money. So I discovered from David that I was actually Scottish. I thought I was Irish, but I was Scottish. My great-great-grandfather, David Fraser Smith, had come over from Scotland. I discovered he was a bigamist. So I come from a long line of sconnivers and bigamists, probably horse thieves. David Fraser Smith had left a wife and daughter in Scotland, and he had settled in the States and then got married again and had another family. Most of the family of my father's side were iron workers from Scotland who settled near Pittsburgh for working in the steel industry. They were Democrats, alcoholics, gamblers. They tended to cut off from each other if there was a conflict. They weren't much for writing letters. They tended to be stubborn, and they came across as if they knew they were always right. That's my father's motley crew. So, this information helped me to understand and to come to grips with my father's really sad, powerless, and ineffectual life. since he didn't have a father and he was abused by his stepfather and he was used by his conniving mother and he was so neglected and poor, this broken man, he never really had a chance. For him to get married and to father 7 children and to hold down jobs in the Air Force and the Postal Service was pretty good given where he came from. And I had long since, I thought, worked through my daddy issues, but evidently I had not, because my daddy issues were connected to my mommy issues. I connected a marital pattern where I noticed in my father's life, but I hadn't really understood. The theory here at Family Tree, of course, is that we all marry exactly the right person. We fall in love with the right person. People who have hidden characteristics of the people who hurt us the most. Our parents usually are those people. So my mother had many wonderful characteristics, but in truth, she was a massive classic skinniver. And my father had married my mother not once, not twice, but 3 times. They married and divorced each other. Basically, it was whenever my mother needed financial support, she would marry my dad, and he just did what he was told. My dad also married 2 other women who were gold diggers. So he, during his lifetime, picked women who would latch on to him for his limited but stable financial resources. And just like with my mother, he traded financial security for sort of like a one-sided substitute for love that really wasn't genuine love at all. So back in 2005, everything sort of fit together and made sense to me. My father needed to work on his relationship with his conniving mother, so he married a conniving woman. So here's the thing. Sometimes you can know things without really knowing them. You can know them, but they don't come alive and change your life and give you an epiphany that will help you. You can just know them up here. The answers are right in front of you, but you're not really ready to understand them. In 2005, I'd been happily married for 24 years to a good, solid, wonderful, beautiful opposite of a conniver woman. And I had no clue how this pattern of passive, naive, rescuing, codependent men who get used for financial support by conniving, manipulative, lying, dangerous, hurtful women would play itself out in my own life and almost destroy me and really dominate my life for the next 11 years. My mother was a false mother, and she lived to take rather than to nurture. By age 45, I was ripe for a reenactment of my many unresolved issues with my mother. And I found myself surrounded by several attractive, needy versions of my mother, and I guess of my grandmother, who all of a sudden seemed extremely interested in me. And I was just so needy and so insecure, I found the pull to women of this sort way too powerful to resist. I had no clue that I had it in me to become my father. My father was weak and oblivious and overpowered and cheated on and used for money. And I fancied myself as a strong, aware man. And the truth is that my addiction to a string of conniving women has threatened to really bring damage to my life and bring damage to my finances, very similarly to a meth addict's addiction to meth would lower his social status and opportunities. It caused 2 very severe incidents of narcissistic abuse syndrome. It almost killed me. And it's probably set me back all told, maybe a couple $1 million. I've fortunately had enough genuine recovery to keep afloat, to build my large, thriving therapy practice here in Carmel, Indiana, and to keep my home and to keep things held together, but it's been shaky at times. Your issues can cause you to be really shaky at times as you reenact the wounds of your family of origin. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. So sometimes you have to lose almost everything, including yourself, and hit bottom before you wake up to the truth of patterns in your family system that have been staring you in the face all along. So the point of this isn't for me just to share my background with you. I understand that a few of you care that I'm Scottish and that I come from a pack of stubborn, conniving, iron-working, gambling, drinking, bigamous Scotsmen. I get that. But what are the patterns in your family system? Who did you marry and why? Why did you pick that narcissistic husband, number one? And why did you pick narcissistic husband number two? The answer isn't in the men that you married. The answer is in your childhood. When I sit down with a couple to begin working on their marital issues, I don't just see two people sitting in front of me. I see generations of people sitting in front of me. I don't want to hear their story. I want to hear their story. And I want to hear the story of their parents, and I want to hear the story of their parents' parents, and I want to put it all together and understand how generations of people have created the marriage that's in the room in front of me. When you left home, you didn't leave all of your family baggage at home. You brought it with you, and you lugged it with you into your relationship. Ethnic background is really important information in gaining an understanding of who you are and what makes you tick. It's also amazing how frequently ethnic stereotypes turn out to be stereotypes because they're actually true. Polly is itching himself if you hear that noise. Polly, stop. So when I work with Irish people, the alcoholics and the rage and the redheads are all over the family tree. When I work with German people, there's tons of workaholism, emotional distancing, and just a lack of emotional intimacy. Germans are great at working. They're not so good at nurturing and intimacy. With people with Appalachian backgrounds, or what we would call, what some people might call, they say, well, somebody's a hillbilly. Basically, what I'm telling you is I'm a Pennsylvania hillbilly. We were from around Pittsburgh, and we talked like Appalachian people. So, but with Appalachian people, there's rampant sexual abuse and rampant alcoholism involved. So what formed you through the generations? What were the issues that caused you to be who you are? What traditions, what values, what beliefs, what dysfunction helped to form you? Twice in the Old Testament, it is written, the sins of the fathers will be visited upon the children and upon the children's children to the third and fourth generation. And that doesn't mean that you're cursed in one generation because of what another generation did. It means there's a direct impact. My father being wounded by his conniving mother led him to marry a very conniving wife And it led me to pick Betsy, a very, very, very conniving, manipulative, unauthentic, lying, using woman. But that's what I needed to do. That was always in the cards for me. I had an itch that needed scratched. And when I met her, it was like ding, 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 ding. I can play the role of my father, and I can interact with her as if she was my mother. And on a conscious level, that's the last thing that I would want to do. But on an unconscious level, that's what romantic attraction and that's what romantic love was to me. Polly's still itching. I'm bopping him on the head with papers to get him to stop. So a marriage is a very complex organism. Few married people have the communication skills, the insight, the emotional health, the objectivity, the determination, and the knowledge of family patterns to figure out their own stuff and heal it. Almost nobody does. If it feels like you can't get through to your spouse because they just won't hear you, as if you're bucking generations of patterns, it's because that is exactly what's going on. You're bucking generations of powerful patterns that just keep happening over and over again. And you've selected this person to dance the dance that you needed to be dancing, unfortunately. So blending genealogical information with family systems theory, plus having an insight into narcissistic abuse, it can give a marital therapist, a relationship therapist, incredibly powerful tools in understanding, naming, and treating any variety of marital issues. This fella I was working with had been in therapy for a long time, and he'd had this long string of picking women like his father, picking really hurtful, and his mother, picking really hurtful, abandoning narcissists. And he just picked one woman after another who was like his parents. And the therapist had never pointed that out. The therapist just listened and chit-chatted him up, but he didn't teach him the patterns from one generation to the next. So in my article from 2005, I said, give one of our family background researchers a call today at 317-844-2442, and we will help you fit it all together, who you are, where you came from, how your ethnicity plays in, and how you can make that work for you in marriage instead of having it sabotage that really vital relationship in life. We tell people that your life is like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and you're too close to the forest to see the trees. You think when you come into therapy that you've got, say, 75% of the jigsaw puzzle put together, but then when we go digging around in your family tree, we find out that you really only have 35 or 40% of the jigsaw puzzle put together. And a good therapist who builds a family tree and finds out who you are and finds out the truth about your parents and your grandparents and their parents, they will put together 85% of that jigsaw puzzle, and you'll start having light bulbs switch on in your head and in your heart. I wish I could have pieced together the pattern of my grandmother's conniver with the danger that was about ready to befall me. I was in tremendous danger, and I didn't know it because I wasn't ready to know it. You sometimes have to go through things to go through the healing involved. So we have eight actually, really great therapists at Family Tree, and we all use family trees. We spend the first 2 or 3 sessions learning about who you are and where you came from, because it's all relevant. If you've gone to a marriage counselor who didn't start the therapy by finding out about your parents and their parents, you wasted your money. It's really important to have an accurate paradigm. If you have a paradigm that's 80% true, it's like having a GPS system that's 80% correct. You're going to be lost a lot 20% of the time. If 20% of the information coming out of that GPS system is incorrect, you're going to be lost a lot and you're going to be frustrated. And the paradigm that many people on narcissistic abuse channels have is, I'm a victim, I grew up in a healthy home, but I got lured in by the evil narcissist, and now I just need to learn more about narcissism and stay away from the evil narcissist. That's all true, but the part that isn't true is you grew up in a healthy home. If you married an evil narcissist, you grew up in a very dysfunctional and broken home. Even if some of that flew under the radar, the dysfunction and the brokenness was there. So the paradigm that is better, more complete, closer to 100% GPS information is, if you are attracted to narcissists romantically, we need to dig around and find out, did you have a narcissist as a mother or a father? Or maybe you had an alcoholic or a drug addict or a sex addict. Even if they weren't fully narcissistic, they sure acted narcissistic. So, and then healing the underlying wounded little kid at your core, so you don't have to continue to be vulnerable, to continue to pick the same person all over again, Fox in the background. So you don't have to pick your conniving mother over and over and over. I can't recommend it. I've been doing that. I believe I'm cured. I don't think I'm going to pick a conniving woman ever again. It took me 11 years to sort that out and heal the underlying wounds, but I got it. So I just encourage you to read a book called Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendricks, where he talks about family trees. He talks about your imago, or your combination from your father and mother, of how you were put together romantically and sexually to be attracted to who that you picked, and taking responsibility for that. Nobody made you pick that narcissist and then stay with them for 10 years. You chose to do that. And as an adult, you need to take responsibility for that. The good news is that you're in charge of you and you can fix you. And as you heal your underlying family of origin issues, you can break the pattern and not play the role of victim over and over and over again. That's all I had to share. Thank you for watching our 500th video. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that at Family Tree Counseling on YouTube. Also, I have good books on affair recovery, abandonment, and shame at familytreecounseling.com. Also, all 8 of our therapists are available to work with you on Skype or on FaceTime anywhere in the English-speaking world where you have good Wi-Fi. I hope this has been helpful today. Take a look at the hidden narcissistic patterns in your family history. They are there. Dig them out. Find out what the truth is about your family of origin, and that will give you a correct GPS as you move forward in your adult life and in your love life with the scary world that we live in. Thank you for watching. God bless.